Today, I'm diving into my mother-in-law's past to uncover a secret that shook our whole family. Will I be able to handle what I find? I never thought that one phone call could destroy everything I believed about my family. But at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in May, that's exactly what happened. The sharp ring of the phone woke me up, and I fumbled for it in the dark, my heart already pounding. An unknown number. My first instinct was not to answer. Who calls at this hour with good news? But something made me answer. Is this Sarah Martinez? The voice was unfamiliar, professional, cold. Yes, who is this? Ma'am, this is Detective Williams from the Metropolitan Police. We need to talk to you about Eleanor Martinez. She is listed as your emergency contact. Eleanor, my mother-in-law, the woman who baked cookies for my children every Sunday, knitted scarves for the homeless shelter, and was affectionately known as Grandma Ellie by everyone in our neighborhood. What happened? Is she hurt? The pause that followed felt like an eternity. Ma'am, we have arrested Mrs. Martinez in connection with a fraud investigation. It appears that she has been running a complex network of identity theft for the past 8 years. The phone slipped out of my hand and fell with a crash onto the wooden floor. My husband, Mark, stirred nearby, muttering something about the noise. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't comprehend what I had just heard. 8 years. That meant she had been leading a double life before Mark and I got married. While she was helping me plan our wedding, teaching me her secret lasagna recipe, and rocking our newborn daughter to sleep, she was apparently stealing people's personal information and ruining their financial lives. If you're reading this and can relate to family secrets that turned your world upside down, sign up to learn more real stories like this. I'd also love to hear from you. Leave a comment below and tell me where you're at. Sometimes, knowing we're not alone in our experiences changes everything. The next morning, Mark and I sat in the sterile waiting room of the county jail, holding hands, but our minds were in different worlds. He kept shaking his head and repeating like a mantra, "This has to be some kind of mistake." But deep down, I was starting to piece together the puzzle I never wanted to look at. Her expensive gifts, which seemed too generous for someone on a fixed income. The way she always paid cash, even for large purchases. The way she mysteriously inherited money from distant relatives I had never heard of before. The moments when I caught her quickly closing her laptop when I walked into the room and she said she was just checking her email. "Mrs. Martinez?" A tired public defender approached us. "I represent your mother. I need to prepare you. The evidence is substantial. We're talking about dozens of victims, hundreds of thousands of dollars in fraudulent fees." Mark turned pale. There must be some explanation. She wouldn't hurt a fly. But I remembered last Christmas when she had casually mentioned that she knew details about our neighbor's financial problems, information that had seemed strangely specific to me at the time. How she always knew when packages were delivered to houses on our street, when people went on vacation, when elderly residents couldn't figure out their appliances. The truth hit me like a physical blow. She wasn't just a sweet grandmother interested in her neighborhood's lives. She was hunting. When we finally saw her sitting in her orange jumpsuit behind reinforced glass, she seemed smaller somehow, fragile. But when our eyes met, I saw something I hadn't noticed before, a calculating mind that sent shivers down my spine. "Sarah, dear," she said on the phone, and there was still that familiar, warm tone in her voice that had comforted me during my morning nausea and sleepless nights with the baby. "This is all a terrible misunderstanding." "Mom," Mark's voice trembled, "just tell us what happened. Tell us it's not true." She was silent for a long time, studying our faces. Then something changed in her expression. The mask slipped. "You want to know what happened? I'm tired of being invisible. I'm tired of watching everyone live their lives while I survive on welfare handouts." There was an unfamiliar cruelty in her voice that I had never heard before. This was not the woman who had held my hand during my difficult pregnancy, who had sung lullabies to my children in her soft, trembling voice. "Do you have any idea what it's like to realize that you're nothing but a burden to your own son? To know that your daughter-in-law only puts up with you because she has to?" I felt as if I had been slapped in the face. "Eleanor, that's not." "It's not?" Her laughter was bitter. "I've seen you roll your eyes when I talk too long. I've seen you check your phone when I tell stories about Mark's childhood. You think I'm some old fool who doesn't notice these things." Mark was crying, quiet tears rolling down his cheeks. "Mom, we love you. You know that." Love. She spat the word out as if it had a bad taste. Love doesn't pay for prescription drugs or heat the house in winter. You know what it pays for? Control over your own destiny, not waiting for crumbs of love from people who think you're an obligation. The woman sitting across from us was a stranger with my mother-in-law's face. Everything I thought I knew about her, about our family, about the last 10 years of my life came crashing down in that moment. Over the next few weeks, the full extent of her activities came to light. Eleanor Martinez, Ellie's sweet grandmother, was the organizer of a network that preyed on elderly residents in 3 counties. She used her genuine warmth and grandmotherly appearance to gain access to people's homes, befriend lonely elderly people, and gradually extract personal information from them. The worst part? Many of her victims considered her a friend. She went to church with them, brought them homemade soup when they were sick, listened to stories about their grandchildren and health problems. All the while, she was systematically destroying their financial security. Mrs. Henderson, a neighbor who waved to Eleanor every morning as she walked in her garden, lost all her savings. Mr. Chen, whose wife had recently died and whom Eleanor had comforted in his grief, was facing the loss of the home he had lived in for 40 years. A wave of shock swept through our family like a tsunami. My children, who adored their grandmother, couldn't understand why they couldn't see her anymore. 7-year-old Emma kept asking when Grandma Ellie would be back to read her stories. 5-year-old Jake drew a picture for her and cried when I explained that she couldn't come anymore. How do you explain to children that someone they love and trust has been living a lie? How do you preserve their innocence while protecting them from a truth that will shatter their understanding of right and wrong? Mark blamed himself, convinced he should have noticed the signs. He stopped sleeping, poring over old photo albums for hours, looking for clues he had missed. Our marriage, which had survived job loss, health problems, and all the usual stresses of raising young children, suddenly seemed fragile under the weight of this betrayal. "What else don't I know about my family?" he asked me one night, his voice devoid of emotion. "What else have I overlooked?" I didn't know how to respond. The foundation of our shared history felt unstable, like walking on ice that could break at any moment. If Eleanor had been able to deceive us so completely, what other secrets lay hidden beneath the surface of our seemingly normal life? The trial was like a circus. Local journalists camped outside the courthouse, fascinated by the story of the grandmother from next door who had led a double life. Neighbors we had known for years looked at us with sympathy and suspicion, as if Eleanor's crimes had infected us by association. During her testimony, Eleanor showed no remorse. She was eloquent, intelligent, and completely cold as she described her methods. The prosecution portrayed her as a predator who exploited people's loneliness and trust for her own ends. The defense tried to portray her as a desperate woman driven to crime by poverty and social isolation. But sitting in the courtroom and watching her calmly explain how she studied her victims' habits and weaknesses, I realized that the truth was much simpler and more terrifying. She enjoyed it. The power, the deception, the thrill of deceiving everyone around her. We weren't her family. We were her cover. Eleanor Martinez was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. At 73, it was a life sentence. As the judge read the sentence, I saw my husband's shoulders shake with silent sobs. He was mourning not only his mother's fate, but also the death of all the happy memories she had poisoned with her deception. The aftermath was almost worse than the revelation itself. We had to explain to friends and neighbors that we knew nothing about Eleanor's crimes. Some believed us, others did not. Whispers followed us to the grocery store, to pick up the children from school, to community events we once loved. We considered moving, starting over in a new place, but running away felt like admitting guilt we didn't have. Instead, we stayed and slowly rebuilt our reputation, our relationships, our sense of normalcy. It's been 2 years since that phone call changed our lives. The kids have stopped asking about Grandma Ellie, although sometimes I notice them looking puzzled at old family photos where she's smiling next to them, looking like the loving grandmother we knew. Mark is seeing a therapist to help him cope with the complex grief of losing someone who is still alive but was never the person we thought he was. We've had difficult conversations about trust, about how well we can truly know another person, about how to protect our children from future betrayals while continuing to teach them to be open to love. The hardest part isn't the anger or even the sadness, but how this experience has changed my worldview. I now study people more closely, looking for cracks in their facades. I question my instincts when deciding who to trust, wondering what secrets a friendly neighbor or helpful colleague might be hiding. But we are gradually healing. We have realized that families can survive even the most devastating betrayals, that love can survive even after trust has been lost, that everything can be rebuilt from the ruins if there is a desire to work on it. Eleonora sometimes writes letters from prison, long, rambling excuses for her actions, mixed with what may be sincere expressions of regret. We don't respond. We have come to understand that some relationships cannot be repaired, that some people are incapable of the kind of love that puts the well-being of others above their own desires. If you've read my story to the end, thank you for listening. Sharing this was painful, but also cathartic. Subscribe if you want to hear more real stories about families who have experienced the unimaginable in their lives, and leave a comment. It is very important for me to feel connected to my listeners. It helps me understand that experiences like these connect people from different places and different circumstances. The woman I called mom for 10 years is serving time for crimes that destroyed dozens of lives. But somehow, despite everything, our family is still holding on, bruised, changed, but holding on. And some days, that feels like enough of a victory.